Imagine crafting one of the most important metal albums of the 21st century, starting with nothing but just a blank slate. How did Lamb of God pull off this feat? And what made this process so intensely challenging and rewarding? Today in part 2 of my Ashes of the Wake celebration, let's explore its whirlwind creation and discover the secrets behind its lasting impact. The journey of this album began with the release of Lamb of God's music video for Ruin. Mark Morton noted that the video captured the band's essence really well, and this drew in significant attention from major record labels, who were eager to be a part of the new wave of American heavy metal that was happening. Among them was Epic Records, who offered them a deal that was not the most lucrative, but offered them a chance to retain some of their musical freedoms. In December of 2003, Lamb of God found themselves with a new contract and the end of a tour for their new album, As the Palaces Burn, which had just been released 7 months prior. Their new record label, Epic Records, promised a lot more promotion and a lot more connections, but this came at a price. They needed to write a new record quickly. Unlike their previous albums, where they could take their time and draw from years of riff writing, this time the pressure was on for the band. Mark Morton recalls while this album was their usual collaborative effort in songwriting, the band was pushed to their creative limits due to the time constraints. But the upside in this new deal meant that they could quit their day jobs, so they had more time to focus on creating new music, and they could tour without distractions. The first task for this album was hiring a producer. They had previously worked with Steve Young and Devin Townsend, but their A&R guy suggested they try out a different producer, Machine. The band quickly agreed and began working on the new record. Blythe described Machine as a very physical producer. He was really energetic and aggressive with his movements while you were recording your parts, and Machine also placed a greater emphasis on really good songwriting, as well as getting really good vocal takes. Their hard work paid off when on August 31st, 2004, Ashes of the Wake was released and immediately went to number 27 on the US Billboard 200. The album featured 2 singles, Laid to Rest and Now You've Got Something to Die For, which both had music videos, but even before the album was released, Lamb of God was already on the road with Ozfest playing the second stage. And this was the beginning of a very arduous touring cycle for the band, who would play 110 shows in 2005, just trying to relentlessly promote the album. Songs from Ashes of the Wake have been played over 3,463 times, making it their most live performed record. Laid to Rest leads with 1,035 live performances, followed by Hourglass at 999, Now You've Got Something to Die For at 509, and Omerta with 498 live performances. Laid to Rest alone has more live performances than the entirety of the new American Gospel album. During the touring of Ashes of the Wake, the band also recorded a live DVD and CD. Philadelphia would be released in 2005 and featured 6 tracks from this new album. The DVD later went platinum in America, selling 100,000 copies. This period was really crucial for Lamb of God, and I think they met and exceeded any expectations the label had for them. Now let's take a look at some of the writing process and the gear they used. While there is not very detailed notes on what they used, I do believe that they used a Mesa Boogie Mark IV for the guitars, probably like a Mesa Cab, and I know Mark Morton uses 1975 Les Paul, but you can also see in the Laid to Rest studio video that he was using a Jackson Dominion. In that same video, you can see Willie Adler using his famous Diablo custom guitar, but he also most likely used his ESP Eclipses. Like the other 2 Lamb of God albums at this point, this album was a true collaborative effort, a familiar approach for the band, but really crucial in this crunch time they had. Mark and Willie would bring in riffs or whole songs, and then the band would pare that down to create a really cohesive piece, making sure that each song had a verse, chorus, pre-chorus, bridge, all the sections that they typically had in songs, except for 2. Ashes of the Wake was an instrumental piece that didn't really get pared down like the rest of them did, and Blood of the Scribe doesn't really have that same structure that the rest of the songs follow. And you can see this process a little more in-depth in their Sacrament DVD, where they documented the whole process of making that album. Unlike their last 2 albums, they had no riffs in reserve. They had to write everything and immediately bring it to the band. Working with Machine was also really different for the band. He had a different approach, and he really pushed to focus on the songwriting and make sure every part of a song fit exactly where it needed to be. He was really big on feeling, and if it felt right, and if it didn't feel right, he wanted it cut. And you can also see that during the Sacrament documentary as well. The songwriting on this album is very technical and very tight. Mark Morton and Willie Adler are huge thrash fans, and they not only wrote really fast technical riffs, but they did a lot of downpicking as well. The album blends thrash, melodic death metal, and hardcore elements, resulting in a sound that sounds pretty metalcore, but also is really distinct from that scene, which is what they were going for. They were trying to break the mold of being a metalcore band. And I think what really helps that is the scales they were using. A lot of the other bands at this time were using just the melodic minor scale, and Lamb of God was using the Phrygian dominant scale, the harmonic minor, and a little bit of the melodic minor scale in their riffs, which really creates a unique blend that just sounds like Lamb of God. So now I want to play some of my favorite riffs and get into some info behind the songs. So the album opener is Laid to Rest. and that main riff was written by Mark Morton, and he has admitted that this riff is heavily inspired by Testament, specifically Into the Pit, and if you listen to that track, you can definitely hear the influence it has on Laid to Rest. So track number 2 is Hourglass, and Mark Morton has stated that he wanted this to be the actual album opener instead of Laid to Rest, but the label honed in on Laid to Rest instead. This track features some of their most technical and intricate guitar work, including the bridge riff, which they have called the Vomit riff, and I'll let Mark Morton explain why.
This is a riff from a song we have called Hourglass. It's one of our older songs. And years ago in some interview we called it the Vomit riff because when I first heard Willie play it, before I came up with the harmony, I felt nauseous because I was like, how am I I gotta come up with a harmony for this, I'm never gonna be able to play it. Over the years, it's not as hard as I thought it was, but
it's getting harder for me.
When I first heard it, I was pretty intimidated by it. So.
Track number 3 is Now You've Got Something to Die For. This track is one of the most overtly political tracks on the whole album. Randy and Mark often joke that having a conservative regime in the White House leads to a lot of really good punk and metal material. Track number 4 is The Faded Line, and Mark has heard from a lot of veterans that saying that they really identify with the song, and the lyrics for the song are Randy and Mark's viewpoint of what was happening in the early 2000s. Track number 5 is my favorite track, Omerta. This track is really heavy and slow with a lot of groove, and I really like that it's really easy to play. It might be their heaviest track, and I think that's because of its deliberate pace. Willie Adler actually brought in a much faster version of the main riff, and then the band and Machine had him slow it down, and that's how we have the song that we have today. For Randy, this is one of his favorite songs musically, and the lyrics he wrote are about handling your own shit, which he says is very attractive to him, especially in this insane, litigious, whiny society we live in. Track number 6 is Blood of the Scribe, a very poetic song with lyrics written entirely by Randy. Track number 7 is One Gun. Mark Morton played a key role in shaping this song, and he provided the main riff for the song. He also got the inspiration for the lyrics of the song from Nas's One Mic, with the idea that what Nas was trying to express was one mic can change the world. He changed it around to one gun can change the world. Track number 8 is Break You. It's another fuck you song. Track number 9 is What I've Become. I think this is a really cool song, and I just couldn't find any facts for it. Track number 10 is Ashes of the Wake. It's the instrumental piece on the album. Randy jokingly says that this is his favorite track because he doesn't have to sing. Willie Adler brought in the majority of the song, and Mark likes to describe it as a winding riff bonanza. It features a lot of impressive solos. The second solo was done by Alex Skolnick of Testament, and the third solo was done by Chris Poland, who used to play in Megadeth. Then last, the track closer is Remorse is for the Dead. Another one of Randy's favorite songs, and this song is about his time spent in his punk house where there was a lot of debauchery, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of drug abuse, and it just poetically describing his stay there. Ashes of the Wake stands as a monumental metal release, not only of the 21st century, but of all time. While this is my personal opinion, I think the album speaks for itself. It captures everything that defines and elevates metal music. It has very dynamic guitar riffs, really deep and poetic lyrics, really good bass lines, and some of the most unique drumming in the genre. Few albums rival it, with Master of Puppets and Rest in Peace coming to mind immediately. Ashes of the Wake has made a lasting impact on metal, having sold 600,000 copies worldwide, going gold in America, and reaching number 27 on the Billboard US 200. Laid to Rest even featured in Guitar Hero 2, and a lot of articles and guitar journals featured as a really important album of the 21st century. Remarkably, Lamb of God crafted this album in just 6 months, starting with virtually no material. Their ability to achieve such a feat and produce an album that is widely hailed as one of the best of the 21st century is impressive. For me and many Lamb of God fans, this is their favorite and Lamb of God's best album, and most, if not all, songs on this album are a hit. So if you enjoyed this video, I want you to check this one out right here. This is part 1 of my celebration for Ashes of the Wake. I looked at 2 different magazines. I got the Revolver magazine that they just put out that just features Lamb of God, and I took a look at Now You've Got Something to Die For. It was a tab in an old Guitar World magazine I had. So if you want to see more Ashes of the Wake content, I'd check that video out. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.